Hello, this is Marty Cross's Corner. Can you hear me, Helen?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. That's fantastic. It's brilliant to have you on Cross's Corner. This is the second time round, and hopefully this will go okay. So, Helen, it's been a while since Tokyo. How have the last few months been for you?
They got so quickly, actually. I feel like, yeah, it's just come around so quickly since we got back. It's just gone back into full time mum mode and kind of being here, there, and everywhere with kids, and it's really nice.
Yeah, and you had a little row, didn't you, in the head of the River Eights, the sort of reunion for Rio.
Yeah, I was really lucky because the Rio 8, the British girls, they asked me to step in because Olivia is in Australia at the moment, so I was their sub and I jumped on board. So it was really nice, not only because it's a chance to row, but they're like really great friends who I made over the years. Most of them retired now, and so it's just like it's really cool to kind of see to come out the other side of it and see that fun and the camaraderie of rowing, and yeah, it was really great.
Wow. Just thinking about Tokyo, has it changed the way you view that result with a bit of distance from the games, or have you pretty much interpreted it the same way as you did immediately after?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I surprised myself actually in my response to the result. I thought, the me of maybe 10 years ago would kind of been frustrated with something that I think I could have done better at, or things that I could have changed. But actually, I think with age and time and with life changes, your perception, your shift changes on sport, and I see everything quite differently now. And so yeah, immediately after the race in Tokyo, I was like, yeah, I think, things done differently, we could have done better, but we did well for what we did on the day. We did really well to get to the final. Like I think I found the positives in it much more than I would have done in the previous version of myself, I guess. And also, I wasn't the version of myself I was in London and Rio. That was my life, that was my goal, that was my everything. This time round, I would have been unrealistic to think it was my everything. It wasn't. I was never supposed to do that game. So it was almost like anything was an extra.
So I'm really interested in terms of you coming back and how sort of high up the pecking order you were in terms of when you came back to the squad, because I guess you must have been doing seat races and so on. Were you and Polly the top pair in the squad, and was it always you in the pair, or did you look at any other boat options?
Yeah, I never actually wanted to sweep when I came back. I thought I'd come back and scull. I
Really?
thought I hadn't. I love sculling. I've won a few final trials in my single. I really like sculling, and I saw that the double hadn't qualified, and was going to qualify that, try and qualify that year. And so for me, coming back with the one thing I really didn't want to do, especially with kind of being an older athlete who I had retired, I stepped away from the sport. I didn't want to come back in and sort of technically take somebody else's dream or seat away from them. So I thought, actually, the double is an opportunity to add seats to the team, to add a boat to the team, because it's not even qualified. So I came back and actually did some sculling. I did some stuff in the doubles, which went really well. But the coaches decided they wanted me to go into the sweep side. I think they were looking at the fact they hadn't really established a pair yet. And at the same time I crossed over to the sweep side, Polly had a little bit of illness. So I came in, and it was natural for Polly and I to go in a boat together, because we were both at kind of a starting point of not having done a lot of sweep for a while.
Yeah.
We never kind of thought we were going to carry on in the pair, but they said, okay, go to the Europeans, see how you do, and then we'll integrate you into the team. We went to the Europeans and won. And so it was kind of tricky for them to look to put us anywhere else other than the pair, I think.
Yeah.
There were also loads of other factors with COVID. It wasn't as simple as it would have been in the past. I think we probably would have been joined into a seat racing group, probably would have been tested a bit more, but there were so many rules and regulations. Once you went in a boat with someone, you were bubbled with them. Once if one person got symptoms and you had rowed with them a previous week, you had to isolate. So actually, once Polly and I won that European race, everything was simple when we stayed together, and we liked it that way. We enjoyed rowing together, and so and for my lifestyle with the kids, the flexibility worked well. So it kind of happened quite naturally, but it was definitely never my target.
How surprised were you at your speed and how fast you are? And I'm thinking because Anna Watkins tried to come back and didn't manage to get in the team. Obviously, you know, I know you talked to her a little bit beforehand, but how surprising was it that you came back at the level that you did?
Really surprised. I mean, I never would have done it. I never would have even thought about it if I wasn't seeing speed. And I think it was like 6 months after having the twins, I did a 2K and like equaled my PB, like my pre-Rio PB. And I was like, this is madness. Like, I didn't expect it, but I think it was just a combination of lots of different things. I had stayed pretty fit after Rio. We were in lockdown. I was just training on my own, doing what I fancied, doing whatever I could fit in. And then there's this added extra of kind of like once you've had kids, I think something like I felt tougher, I felt harder, I felt more kind of
Wow.
kind of unlocked a little difference in me. And I just thought actually it's really exciting to see what could be done. And like you say, Anna didn't quite manage to make that step onto the team. But I think that was sort of situational factors. Like she had to go into training, she had to leave her kids at home. There was this unique opportunity placed in front of me, which is I could do it at home, and that was a limiting factor. That's what Anna found. She had to juggle too many things, and she's exactly like me. She didn't want to leave her kids behind, and she was finding that she was being torn in two different directions. Whereas for me, I was like, you'll never get this opportunity to train from home again. See if you can manage the two. And I kind of thought I had 3 rules. I said the kids always have to come first.
Yeah.
It has to work as a balance in a lifestyle, and as long as I'm happy and enjoying the rowing, then I'll just keep going. And I'll just keep going for another week. I'll just keep going for another week. And I never ever thought I would see it through, but it just week on week kept going.
Just before we pass on, Helen, what was your 2K score?
So I think about 6 months after the twins, I did about a 6:45, and then I went down to a 6:42 a little bit late after that. And it was just like from literally on my living room. And so I just thought, like, if I'm doing this and I'm not on a program, I've not got coaching, I've not got anything, I'm just doing it, then it really excites me to want to just see what I can do if I keep going.
Was there something about the way the squad was set up which made it more easy for you? I'm thinking under David Tanner and the days, you know, that Caversham was like, would it have been as easy for you to come back, or would there not have been any difference?
I think the only difference was COVID. I think David would have been really open and really interested in having me back, I imagine. I think it's more that it was COVID and that like almost all rules are out the window, and it's a chance for anyone to try anything. Yeah, it was more the fact that we were training from our living rooms, and it just kind of it gave something I wouldn't have ever been prepared to do before. Is when the babies were so small, it's to leave. I mean, I was breastfeeding. I literally had to be with them, and so in any other world, I just don't think I could have done it.
Yeah. I'm interested. I know we talked about this before, but in terms of the run-in that the GB team had to Tokyo, one of the things I was surprised about was that there wasn't a training camp in Japan prior to the Olympics. And I know that a lot of other countries did that. I mean, what sort of impact did that have on you?
I think it was a big impact. I mean, it's one of the reasons I look back and I don't get upset about the result, because I don't think it was a reflection of what we could have done, because I think there's things that we could have done differently as a team in the build-up. I do think an on-the-water camp in country would have been best. I do think there were lots of things as a team we could have done better. But to be fair, we were always playing this fine balance of the what if the COVID situation, or what if that one person gets COVID? What if traveling in country and being in one extra place increases your chances of somebody getting COVID? I think everything was very much balanced up with performance versus risk, being right in the middle of that COVID bubble, especially being from Britain. I think maybe other teams and other countries hadn't experienced the same kind of full-on aspect of COVID, and it really changing your lifestyle and changing almost that fear and that paranoia. I think we were a very paranoid team, but maybe we had to be. if we had gone to another country, had a training camp, and somebody got COVID, we'd have gone, we should not have done that. But at the same time, we see other countries who did it and they got away with it, and we're kind of going, we should have done that. So I do think we should have done our preparation differently, and I do think it would have led to genuinely different results across the team.
And it's quite interesting. I mean, normally under David Tanner, everything was sorted to the last sort of, the last full stop, the last comma. But I gather when you arrived in Japan, you had to train on ergometers at a place that was quite a way away from the village. And when you got there were sort of ergometers that other teams had all lined up, and
there were lots of little things which, when I compare it to say like our Rio preparation, which is the only other kind of international Olympics I've been to, I can kind of make that comparison. There were just things like not having rowing machines in the village, but seeing other countries with rowing machines in the village. And by the end of the Olympics, they were there, but not quick enough, and not slick enough, and not as a direct comparison. But you're working in a really tricky environment, and someone like David Tanner with years of experience knows the questions to ask, knows the things that should be planned for. So I definitely think there's no finger pointing or blame. It's a learning experience, but at the same time, it doesn't take away the fact that for the athletes, it's some things are disappointing because some things should have been done a little bit differently with hindsight.
Yeah, just thinking about the Kiwis that won Olympic gold. It's always tempting. I know you raced that pair with Heather. How close do you think you guys would have been to the Kiwis at your best?
Oh, I mean, honestly, it's impossible to say. I mean, say a month out from the games, Polly and I were thinking, we were just excited to answer that question and see where we were. Genuinely excited to see. I don't know. You just don't know. I mean, our percentages were good, our scores were good, our times were good. But the Kiwis are an exceptional crew, and they deserve every single centimetre of that race that they won. And I'm never saying that anything should be different, because it wasn't different, and that was the race we had. The frustration is more internal in that, okay, if we had prepared slightly differently, it's just like an intrigue question rather than something that really frustrates me, I guess.
Yeah. You've always rode in the bow seat. Is there any particular reason for that? And have you ever did you try the combination the other way around?
Yeah, we've always tried the combinations the other way around. And actually, Heather and I and Polly have both switched up in training and really liked it. And I think that we would have happily raced like that. But there's this certain paranoia where you're like, oh, stick to what we know, stick to what works. And definitely, if at any point in either pair, if it ever stopped working, we would have just switched, and it rode fine, because we used to do some pieces like that. And I quite like the stroke seat, but I also quite like being a bit bossy in the bow seat.
So when you first got into your pair, I'm taking you back to 2010 now, you won that silver medal, was it, in New Zealand?
Yeah.
I mean, I still find that result quite astonishing in terms of your experience, how much time you had in the pair. I mean, do you ever look back on it and wonder what was going on there?
Yeah, totally. I mean, no matter what we've won since then, and no matter what heights we got to after that, it's always the race where I look back and think, actually, that was possibly the most exceptional in terms of where we had come from. I think when you look at the results on paper, you wouldn't really pick that out as anything very interesting. But when you see the story as a whole, I started rowing 2 years before that race. I've been rowing since 2008, and then in 2010 we won a world silver medal, and it didn't really make sense. But at the same time, it was a trajectory that we were on for many reasons, and most of the reason involved the people around us, the coaches, the support, the wider team, the kind of the system that brought me up through the talent ID. It's not, on one hand it looks ridiculous, but then you kind of go, it's not coincidence, because I had really, really amazing people around me, as well as an amazing teammate.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I'm kind of thinking, I mean, you obviously know a bit about the squad and the athletes that are there. I'm just thinking, where's the next Helen Glover or Heather Stanning coming from? Because Was that just like a fluke or a one-off that you two guys came together? Because if you look at the British, I'm talking to the women's team at the moment, there doesn't seem to be women of that level coming through the start program.
See, I think actually I'm really looking forward to this summer's racing because I think this women's team is going to be different to anything we've seen for a long time. I think the Project Paris group who have come up, who kind of weren't in line for Tokyo, but have been putting in the groundwork to get onto the Paris Olympiad team, are a really exciting prospect. And I think over the next couple of years are going to be putting themselves right where you'd kind of expect the British women to be. So, I mean, I say I don't know, but I've got a feeling that there's going to be a really good group coming through.
Yeah, that's really interesting because obviously there's a new British or new Australian chief coach who's come to work with the women. Have you? And the word kind of is that they've sort of toughened the training program up. Have you heard anything in terms of Caversham and what's been going on there?
Yeah, I mean, when I rejoined the team training for Tokyo, I didn't think it was as hard as maybe it had been previously. And then this time round, now we've got the new coaching in, I think it's really taken a step up. It probably feels like a really big step, but it's probably putting it more in line with where it used to be in terms of the mileage and things. And yeah, I think it's hard, but not ridiculous. It's where people need to be. It's a lot of mileage, a lot of like really conditioned training where it's really thought through. And I think the girls are reveling in it. From what I've seen, they're really athletic and really moving on.
Oh, that's fantastic! Really exciting. First World Cup is coming up in Belgrade, I think, at the end of next month. So it'll be exciting to see the British team out there. Taking you back, just through you, we talked about that 2010 result, and you had an amazing race, I think, with the Kiwis. Your speed had clearly stepped on in 2011, where you raced in Bled. And you had this amazing race with the Kiwis that you just were on the wrong side of.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the ones that's probably the biggest disappointment I've had when I've crossed the line.
Really?
Yeah, like we thought we'd win. So all season we won all the race, we won the World Cups and things, and we went into that kind of wanting to win the World Championships a year before the Olympic Games. That had always been our target all year. And we both had tummy bugs. I think I don't know if you remember, like, a few members of the team had quite bad tummy bugs. Yeah. I had a really, really bad one. Lost about 5 kilos after racing my heat till the final. So we raced our semi-final, and I wasn't well. And then by the time I raced the final, I had recovered, but was sort of dehydrated and light and all these things. And in a way, I think that actually probably one of the biggest things that helped me through the next year was the fact that, like, it's okay, we got this close to them, and you were like, and next time you'll be well, you'll be healthy. And it also just kind of taught me so much about when you go away to racing, it doesn't matter how much training you've done. If you get, like, do not get ill, do not get injured. Since then, I've just really paranoid everywhere I went to race, and since then I haven't been sick or ill or injured at a race. And it was probably a really important lesson. And maybe if I hadn't had that, I would have got a bug at an Olympic Games or something. So it taught me a lot, but it was also just like I was really upset after that race, just because I thought we could have done it.
Yeah, I remember it was something like 0.2 of a second or something. Yeah. Quite close. And it's a different matter in the 2012 Olympics, though. You were clearly the favourites for that gold medal. I mean, what is it like being the favourites for a gold medal going into a home Olympics?
I mean, for me, I genuinely had only just started calling myself a rower. You know, I'd gone through 21 years of life and not known anything about the sport. I was just calling myself a rower. I hadn't come to terms with being an Olympian. And so in the run up, I remember we kind of sat down and we said to the coaches, I don't want to do interviews. I don't want to speak to anyone. We kept our heads down. we were really fortunate that sort of Anna and Catherine were there as our real poster girls for the women's British rowing team. So they could kind of do the interviews and things, and Heather and I could feel like we could just stay in our channel, stay in our lane, and not kind of poke our head up above the parapet too much, because we just wanted to kind of stay focused. And we were like, if we can win quietly, we want to. Just less pressure, the better. But then that kind of faded a little bit when, I guess, almost the day before, really, before our final, when people started to realise, okay, we've got to day 5 of the games now and we haven't won a gold. And people looking around to see where that gold was going to come from. And very clearly, we were going to be racing at 9 o'clock the next morning, or 11 o'clock the next morning or something. So very quickly, it was like, okay, all eyes on these two. And so suddenly, you know, the morning of our final, we wake up and on the pages of every newspaper is our faces saying, tune in at 11, watch them win. You know, people were being told to watch us win at 11, and I was like, we're trying to keep this quiet. We really didn't want all that, but at the same time, I remember just stepping back. I remember we just kind of started having the most random conversations, trying to pretend everything was totally normal. We're so fortunate with our relationship, in particular with Robin, our coach. He was amazing at normalizing these situations and just grounding us and bringing us back to the process. And then, honestly, when I crossed the line, it was a bit like, you know, I said I could only just call myself a rower. I really couldn't yet call myself an Olympian. And now I had to call myself Olympic champion. I couldn't call myself Olympic champion for about 6 months. It just didn't feel like me. It felt, and every time I was introduced, I felt like they were talking about someone else. I felt very detached from it. And it was a good 6 months till I actually could refer to myself as that, because it just didn't seem real at all.
That's really interesting. I mean, I'm wondering if that's a little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm thinking, you know, personally, I had it took me a lot longer. I think it took me, you know, at least a decade or so before I could own up to being an Olympic champion. What do you think changed for you that enabled you to look at yourself and say, I'm an Olympic champion, and feel comfortable with that?
Probably Rio. I think for me, whether I wanted to carry on or not was really obvious. I thought, I've just started this journey. I'm definitely going to carry on to Rio. Whereas for Heather, she wasn't so sure. She'd been rowing a little bit longer. She had a career in the army to go back to, so she went back to the army for a year. But I was like, no, I want to go to Rio because I want to feel the feeling. The 10-year-old me, if you'd asked her, what does it feel like to win the Olympic Games? You'd have said punching the air and excitement and cheering and passion. And I was like, I felt a bit robbed of that, because I just finished and felt relief, but just disbelief.
Yeah.
And I wanted to feel all those things. And so I thought, no, I'm going. And if I cross the line first in Rio, I'll own it. And that's really what happened. You know, I crossed the line in Rio, and I had 4 years to come to terms with the fact that I was an Olympic champion, and to know that if I crossed the line again, that I would feel like that in the moment. And so, yeah, it was a real justification for carrying on those 4 years was in that moment of crossing the line in Rio and kind of going, yeah, this is what I expected to feel the first time, and I'm feeling it now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, because the Rio, as I recall, for you guys, I mean, it was obviously very difficult with the conditions, but your opposition was closer to you. I think I'm remembering maybe a semi-final
in the heat. The Danish crew were much closer than we thought. We were on the kind of the two opposite sides of the course. And I remember looking over, and I think they were all way over in lane 6 or something. We were in like 1 or 2 or something like this. And I kind of hadn't really noticed them. And I looked after a few minutes, I thought, they're still there. And they're not only there, they're level. So, and I remember saying to Heather, let's go. And so we kind of just won that one in the closest race we'd had in like 10 years or 8 years or something.
How much did that bother you?
Not actually, it was I remember kind of getting all this paranoia and thinking, oh, we're not as fast as we thought we were. And even though, you know, we'd won all the World Cups by a good distance, I was sort of starting to think really irrationally. And I remember I got into the lift with the men's quad, and we were going up in the lift, and I must have been quite quiet. And they went, Helen, you do know it's really laney out there. Like just don't worry, you're fine. And I remember because I remember, like, it's really cool when someone from your team can provide that for you and can provide that really rational, like, that's what I would have said to them in that situation.
Yeah.
So for your teammates to do that for you, I think it's really nice. And after that, I thought, yeah, okay, fine, we'll just go out and race the semi-finals, and that'll give us more information. And if we need to start panicking, we panic after the semis, and we raced the semis, and it was fine. And so by the time we raced the final, we kind of led the race, and it was closer than London, but never a worrying. I kind of think we felt really in control the whole way, and kind of always felt comfortable. We didn't need to bring our sort of full sprint into it, and kept it reasonably controlled through to the line. So yeah, definitely that heat was enough to kind of make us question and look into whether we were where we thought we were, and we needed that semi-final to just ground us a bit, which it did.
So how are you as a person dealing with nerves? Because I know there's so much preparation. You talk of Robin, your coach, really grounding you. How do you go about dealing with your nerves for big races like that?
I guess there's a misconception from the outside, especially when Heather and I were kind of rowing through a long period of a winning streak, was that you must be so confident going into these races. But for me, something that I kind of the way I motivate myself was always through healthy paranoia, and actually the worst. Like, I would literally sit there and thinking, I'm the worst rower here, I'm going to lose this race, and almost accepting the nerves, almost accepting that horrific feeling of just being scared. And I remember I had a conversation with Chris Shambrook, our psychologist, and I said, I hate feeling like this. I feel like it every time, and no matter how many times I win, I always come back to feeling really like uncomfortable. And he said, well, have you ever underperformed? Have you ever not won these races? And I said, no. And he said, well, maybe that is how you get your best out of yourself. And I think just understanding it and rationalizing a little bit just made the uncomfortable feel a little more comfortable for me. So I think rather than getting less nervous, I just learned to sit comfortably with my nerves, to rationalize everything, to know, like I said about with the heat in the semi-final, it's like, okay, it's fine to be a little bit anxious and nervous about that heat, but now let's look at the semi-final and use that information. And that information gave us more confidence, and so I could relax a little bit. So yeah, I definitely use information immediately around me quite a lot.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Did you have the same, when you came back in 2021 for the Europeans in Tokyo, did you find you had the same kind of mentality, or had motherhood changed the way you prepared for races?
I had a really different mentality. I remember sitting in Varese on the start line for the Europeans, not even a year after starting rowing again. And I remember sitting there and going, oh, how am I even back here? Like, I genuinely, on the start line of the final, I was almost laughing in disbelief that I'm back. I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm here again. Like, 5 years after I was supposed to have retired, couldn't really believe that I was doing it all again. But I think the importance of racing not the importance of racing, but that kind of it being the be all and end all. It wasn't ever going to define my happiness. It wasn't ever going to define me. It gave me the freedom to just kind of enjoy it a bit more, I guess, and not feel really kind of like it was all encompassing.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in terms of the way you guys moved the pair. I mean, you were rowing at the same time as the Kiwi pair of Murray and Bond. Did you ever feel anything in common with those Kiwi pair? Because you were both very dominant at the same time.
Yeah, it was really funny, because I guess we came onto the scene a little bit later than them. I remember they in 2010, when we got silver, they won, and it was obviously their home world championships, and so they were huge. And I remember thinking, wow, they're obviously the crew of the moment. And then from that point onwards, both us and that pair kind of had a mirror image of their run through, and it was actually really nice. It was kind of almost really comforting. Kind of, it stopped you kind of looking around thinking, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, somebody should be beating. It's like, no, we should be doing this, they're doing that, why shouldn't we? It kind of gives you that understanding that no, what we're doing is possible. They're doing it because they work hard and they row well. Well, we're doing it because we work hard, very well. From
your seat in the bow, what's I know this isn't a straightforward answer, but what is the secret of rowing a pair? Because you guys did row that pair beautifully. I think maybe you would point to you guys more than Murray and Bond and say, look, this is the way to row a pair. I mean, what are some of the secrets of rowing a pair from your perspective?
I guess the thing that Robin always drilled into us really early on was the relationship with the hull. And especially in a pair, such a light boat, and two of you going out to either side of the boat, there's so much potential for disruption, either side to side or pushing that stern back every stroke. And so the relationship with the hull was pretty much the number one thing. Every time we move around the front end, how much the boat travels with us rather than away from us. And when we kind of separate out towards our riggers, just having that totally level platform, and every time it's level, the shoulders can just stay relaxed as the handles go to the water. And every time it's even slightly off, there's no way you can both be relaxed going into the water. So yeah, probably relationship with the hull would be the number one thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And did you have that? Was that magic there when you picked it up back again with Polly in the Tokyo combination?
Yeah, actually, we unexpectedly, I guess, and I mean, it kind of makes sense now because we had a history together in 2013, and but yeah, we kind of jumped back, and even though we had both had our different journeys through the last few years and both done different things in different boats and then had different time out, we got in and were like naturally finding more speed than we should have been. You know, we were doing at Caversham these kind of 3-2Ks at lower rate pieces and stuff, and kind of doing really, really well on the percentages and the times, and like we're thinking this shouldn't be here, but clearly we're moving well together. No matter where we've come from, we've come together, and I think we fundamentally moved the boat the same together.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just conscious. I know your time is short this morning, Helen. But in terms of being a role model for women, it was something quite amazing to see you come back after motherhood. I mean, how conscious are you of being a role model, and what kind of conversations have you had, or what have other women said to you about, you know, what you've done and the
I think one of
impact
the
of
most
it?
amazing, like one of the most amazing things actually of the whole thing was like I never started rowing to ever think you could possibly become a role model of any kind. And then after London, especially with it being a home games, loads of people I'm now meeting, teenagers and people at university, who are like, I did this because of watching you guys at the Olympics, and it's amazing. And to have that the second time round, with becoming, you know, a mother that's going to the Olympics and rowing, it's never the reason I started out, but it became a really big motivator. And I felt like actually it's probably the thing that I've done that's kind of taken me more outside of rowing in terms of that, because it's like all parents, no matter whether it's rowing or baking or pottery or writing or whatever it is you want to do, it kind of resonates with all parents. And like I say, with London or Tokyo, it was really, oh, you know, in rowing, you inspired me to row, and you inspired me to kind of keep going in things. But it was really, really amazing to see that, you know, lots of people who haven't rowed before have either tried it or tried their own thing, or motivated them to kind of get back in the gym or whatever it is they wanted to do. I find it the most humbling part of what I've done, and I'm really proud that I could even have affected like one person.
Wow. And I mean, obviously, being, you know, a mum and a dad together with your partner Steve, I guess you're both very supportive of each other. I know you both have busy lives. I mean, how much support did you get from Steve towards, you know, your Tokyo path?
Yeah, massive. And again, I think if it wasn't because of the pandemic, we wouldn't have been able to do that either, because he works abroad quite a lot, and as soon as we were put into lockdown, all his work got cancelled. So he's home, and he's home for the first time in like several years. And so he's home. We've got an 18-month-old and newborn twins, and in the like that's like the most unlikely time you'd think you'd ever start
Yeah,
an
yeah,
Olympic campaign when there's a year to go. But actually it was the most likely time for us, because he is able to, you know, be full-time dad for a while, and or just take them for a walk while I get an hour on the water, and to juggle it between us. As soon as his work started up again, it became really tricky. but luckily that was only with like a few months to go till Tokyo, and I just had to kind of get my mum up and things like that, and everyone kind of help out. But yeah, until that time, it was like almost a year where he could be here when he wouldn't have been otherwise. And yeah, so it's I've been very lucky. Yeah.
So, so finally, what lies ahead from you? Because you had that amazing challenge of the Tokyo Games, and I'm just thinking now. You know, you are a person who's had lots of challenges in her life. As if having 3 kids isn't enough challenge, for parents. But what are you looking forward to in the future? Are you going to remain a mum for a while, or what lies out there for you?
I don't know, and I wish I did know, because I feel like I'm at my best when I've got something really tangible and like I know exactly what I'm working for. But at the moment, yeah, I'm enjoying being full-time mum, getting work in whenever I can, doing bits and bobs kind of work-wise. But challenge-wise, I don't know. I'm kind of got lots of things, ideas and things going, but at the moment I'm just kind of I'm just kind of doing exercise every day, training every day, but with what in mind, I'm not sure.
Wow, that's very intriguing, Helen.
I know. I'll let you know when I made my mind up.
Well, it's been great to talk to you, Helen. I know you've got to get off now, but thank you so much for spending the time to be on Crossy's Corner. It's been an absolute blast,
Oh,
and you've been, yeah, thank you. We'll end the live part of this broadcast now.